Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Cuyahoga Valley National Park. My name is Ranger Pam. I will be your park ranger for the day. Now, today we are going to discuss a question. The question is, what would you be willing to fight for? Now, when I say that, what comes to mind when I say the word fight?
Anger.
Okay, anger.
Physical.
Physical.
War.
War.
Strong opinions.
Oh, strong opinions.
Justice.
Justice.
Getting even.
Oh, okay, getting even. Okay. So fighting means different things to different people. I'm going to try another question. I want you to think of a time when you felt truly free. When you felt truly free. And what I'd like you to do is, like this half the room, I want you guys to think of that time. Go ahead and write it on your dry erase board. You're going to do the same. But once you have that written, I'd like you guys to gather right over here. And you can gather right over here. And I want you to share with each other a time when you felt truly free. So go and give that a moment. Okay, so once you have that written down, come on and gather in your small groups. I want you guys to share with each other a time that you felt truly free.
When I graduated from college.
I go on the Appalachian Trail.
Can relate to that. Actually, I was
Really good.
I always felt free on those.
Okay, did everyone have an opportunity to share?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so were there any similarities to those feelings? Those times?
We're all different, but we could relate to quite a few, or at least a couple of our team's experiences.
So I heard over here, I heard looking down into the Grand Canyon, and I heard looking up from the bottom of the Grand Canyon, right? I heard a couple of things about graduation, getting out of school, right?
Change of life.
Change of life.
Transition.
And aside from free, what is it about you that makes you feel that way? Like, what other kind of emotions come out of that feeling of freedom?
Lack of stress.
Oh, okay. Lack of stress, happy. Awesome. Go ahead and have a seat. Go ahead and have a seat back down. Because we are going to actually talk about those two questions. So, what is worth fighting for? And freedom. You see, Cuyahoga Valley National Park is one of over 400 National Park Service sites all around the country. We preserve the stories of America. And one of the stories we preserve is that of the Underground Railroad. Right? Individuals who use their lives to fight for their freedom or for the freedom of others. And the remnant of the Ohio-Erie Canal towpath trail that sits behind this structure was a route that historians believed those fleeing slavery used to work their way from slavery towards freedom. But before we talk too much about the Underground Railroad, I do want to talk a little bit about the institution that made it necessary, and that is the institution of slavery. So who can tell me, what does it mean to be a slave?
You don't get paid.
Okay, you don't get paid,
You can't go to school.
can't go to school.
Decisions are made for you.
You're more like property.
Nothing is in your control. Almost.
Hard work.
Are you allowed to learn how to read and write if you're a slave?
No.
No. Probably an educated slave is not going to be your best slave. Are you allowed to choose who you're going to marry if you're a slave?
No, probably not.
No. You can choose someone that you're going to commit to, right? And many slaves would have a jumping the broom ceremony where they went over the broom together, and that was their way of showing they were committed to each other. But your master gets to decide who you are with. So, can you protect the ones you love if you're a slave? So one of the cruelest things about the institution of slavery is you cannot protect the people that you love. So knowing all of this, raise your hand if you would have run away on an Underground Railroad. You've run away. Okay. So I see all but one hand go up. Right? So now I want you to think of the person that you love more than anyone in the world, could you leave them behind and run away on an Underground Railroad? So not one hand up. Well, almost hand up? Almost hand up, right? So this was a difficult decision to make, because you're leaving behind not only everything you hate, you're leaving behind everything you know and people that you love. And yet some did flee, right? Some fought for that freedom. And as they fled, they went all different directions. So what direction are you fleeing if you are a slave? North, okay? So if you're fleeing north, you're fleeing through present day, potentially, Cuyahoga Valley National Park. We were one of the routes that historians believe was utilized. And you're going up to Canada. Because if you get into Canada, they're not going to allow slave catchers to enter and look for their bounty. Other runaway slaves are headed south, down to what is today Florida, where Seminole Indians would take them in, and still others were headed west. Because if you went west, they had territories, not states. And slavery is decided on a state-by-state basis. You don't have a state, you can't have slavery. So you're moving through a lot of directions. Now if you're coming up here to Ohio, is Ohio a slave state or a free state? Okay, we are a free state, right? We are a free state, and yet we have black laws until 1848 that say you need a license that's going to cost $500 to live in the state of Ohio. If you're in a court of law, you cannot testify against anyone who is white. And believe it or not, we may be a free state, but there were a lot of people not sympathetic to the cause of the slave. And still, they traveled through this area, largely unassisted. Most slaves made a difficult journey by themselves. So they cross the Ohio River and they get up to that Ohio Canary Canal towpath trail. They can take that 308 miles north, right? It is a 308-mile north-south route from slavery towards freedom. There were some here in the area, though, that were willing to fight for slavery. But they had different ideas about how they were going to fight. Some of them believed that moral persuasion would win the day. That the South had to be convinced that it was morally wrong to hold individuals in bondage. Still others believed that no amount of moral persuasion would convince the South to give up their slaves. And so they advocated the use of violence. And while we can't step back in time and know exactly what we would have done, what I'm going to ask you to do for me right now is to vote with your feet. If you went back in time, would you advocate violence by standing on this end, continuum, nonviolence to end the institution of slavery? So if you want to get up. Violence over here, non-violence over on this side. You can stack, you don't need to be. Okay, so tell me a little bit about why you chose, so you're the farthest over on our utilizing violence to end slavery, so tell me a little bit about why you chose to stand there.
I'm probably not 100% on the violent side, but one thing that I've observed through the study of history is that nonviolence reaches a point, and then there's a boiling point where it becomes a state of inaction. It's a lot of talk, and at some point you have to get off the sidelines to push something to move forward. If it means something, we will fight for it.
Anything else? Why are you on this end?
I think one of my heroes is Martin Luther King and how he acted without violence and made a statement. So I thought he was creative in how he acted. I'm not completely at the no violence. I don't know where that is over here, but I would lean to be using other means.
And those of you in the middle.
I tend to continually evaluate what's around me and what's happening so that I still might slide to one end or the other, depending on how I judge what's happening at that moment. So I may fluctuate, but this is where I'm starting, kind of in the gray area, balanced in the center.
I'm leaning a little to the left end of gray toward this end, but leaving the window open, knowing that sometimes desperate measures may need to involve some violent act, or it may end in violence.
So if I were to tell you that you would lose family members if the option was to use violence, would it change at all? If you knew that you would lose a child, a spouse, a sibling, a parent, would it change where you're standing at all?
I think it would depend on the overall outcome. Sometimes it happens. And there's something you just can't avoid sometimes.
Okay. Go ahead and have a seat. Thank you for sharing. So, it will take violence to end the institution of slavery. And 600,000 individuals will die. They will die on the battlefield. They will starve to death. They will die of disease. But 600,000 individuals, brothers, sons, fathers, predominantly men, will die. And then the Civil War is over. And slavery is ended. Does slavery still exist in the world today?
Yes.
It does, right? It does. There are over 25 million slaves in the world today. So I want to share one final story with you. It's a story about a young man who was 4 years old and lived in Pakistan in the 1990s. So this young man, his father owed someone the equivalent of 12 American dollars. He didn't have it. So he did what a lot of people do in the world today. He sold his 4-year-old child into slavery to cover a $12 debt. So the boy is chained to a carpet loom. He works all day and into the night. He doesn't get to go to school. He doesn't get to play with his friends because he's a slave. Right? In the 1990s, when he is 10 years old, he does something very brave. He runs away. And he finds people who tell him it doesn't have to be like this. And he's a very articulate young man. And so he goes all around the world. He comes here to the United States of America, he goes to Canada, and he talks to kids his age about what it means to be a slave in the world today. He is ABC's Person of the Week. He is Reebok's Youth Activist of the Year. He goes home to Pakistan, and he's riding his bike to his grandmother's house, and he is gunned down in cold blood. Because angry loom owners don't like the idea of young children speaking out against slavery. This is the world today. So out of this tragedy comes one little glimmer of hope. Because one of the young men who he spoke to heard what happened. He started an organization called Free the Children. Today, Free the Children is an international organization that helps fight the exploitation of children and helps try to end this vicious cycle by educating former slaves so they don't have to sell their child into slavery to cover a $12 debt. So, a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. So what would you do? Right? What would you have done in the past, and what would you do today? It's a very famous anthropologist named Margaret Mead. She said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So what I'd like to ask you to do right now is I want you to think about what you are personally willing to fight for today. What would you like to change in the world? And I will give you my example. If I could change the world, people would be open-minded and every child would be loved. So I would like you to give that some thought, and on your dry erase board, write down, if you could change the world, what would you change? And then I'm going to invite you to come on up here into the middle of the room. Maybe we can have a nice circle here. Okay, Now, you do not have to share if you prefer not to share, but would anyone like to share? If you're going to change the world, how are you going to change it?
Everybody would be respectful and kind to each other.
Can I share a story briefly?
Sure.
So I was in an Akron public school about 3 or 4 years ago, and there was a toaster up on the wall, and it was all kind of the rules of the school and everything. And it said, every child should know joy every single day. And I started to, in my own adult ways, it brought me to tears. And it ticked me off that it had to be reminded that kids had to have joy every single day. So that is my reminder.
So hard to decide, and I have a list, but I'm not gonna share the list. There's so many things that are so important. For me, I wrote down literacy for all. So many other things are meaningful day to day too, but literacy changes so many lives and gives people a leg up to get to other places they may never get.
I got universal housing and healthcare. And when I mean universal, I mean worldwide, not just the United States, the entire world. Big wish, but.
I have 3 things.
Okay, go ahead. Say 'em loud, say 'em proud.
Less greed, that's one of them. Less me and more we. And every child gets an education to fit them.
Speak to that. What do you mean by an education to fit them?
Well, we have all these policies saying no child left behind, but a lot of it is we want to push everybody to get a college education. Not every child needs to get that college education because their brain doesn't process that. So getting an education to actually, be happy and, be productive in what they need to do personally.
I have strived to consider other people's beliefs.
Oh. Speak a little bit more about that.
I think we need to be open to the beliefs shared among peoples of other areas of the world. Just be open to those beliefs, consider them, explore them, before dismissing them out of hand, blankly, immediately. Maybe we'd have a little more harmony if we would at least be open.
Everyone would have equal opportunities, especially kids, kind of going like Josh said. I feel like I had lots of great opportunities and my parents gave me things, but that all kids would have this.
So I heard a lot about youth, about joy and opportunity and education, about having a home and being accepted, maybe being open to who people are, with the education, with the literacy and being kind to each other. So is this a world that you would like to live in? Right? So that sounds like a great world you've just created. And I would say that the first step toward change is being able to articulate the change you would like to see in the world today, right? So back years ago, when an underground railroad was necessary, people could articulate or act on that change. Some people fled, left behind people that they loved in search of that quest for freedom, right? They fought for what they wanted. They fought by fleeing. Some of them fought by assisting those who were fleeing, even though they knew they were going to stay in bondage. Up here in Ohio, the abolitionists who were involved, they fought. What did they risk? They risked prison time and finances. If you assisted someone in 1850 who was running away from slavery, you would pay a $1,000 fine and spend 6 months in a federal prison. That's not fighting, right? Risking yourself. And when we stood in that continuum, some things need to be fought for. Some people fight in different ways, right? Some people fight through nonviolence means. Sometimes violence is used. That's a challenging question, isn't it? And still applicable, I would say, in the world today. So on behalf of the National Park Service, I want to thank you for coming out and letting us just share just a little bit about the Underground Railroad. And I want to encourage you to find something you're passionate about and fight to change the world and make it the kind of world that you would like to live in. If you have any questions, feel free to stay around. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.